Finger guns, finger guns, finger guns. We live out here. Hello, people. How in the heck are you? Question, is a little subscribe thing kind of covering up my body? I'm going to live with it if it does. I'm just curious. In my little preview, there's a little thing. But if you are new to us, we're the Brothers Murphy, you should subscribe. Nick won't move up above me there until you subscribe. I heard that to be the truth. Nick's not here. It's just me. Hi, everybody. For anyone that's curious what the hell we're doing right here, I'm going to do a cheeky little unboxing of this here game. This little reminder right there of what we're doing. Unboxing Great Western Trail Argentina because this arrived today, rather unexpectedly. So might as well crack it open. It is still in the shrink, so, you know, no trickery. I don't know what trickery I could pull off. Maybe it was just a can of worms in here, but there is not. It's just a board game that hopefully has its pieces. You got to think. It's heavy enough that you'd assume it does. For anyone that's unaware of what this is a follow-up, I guess, to Great Western Trail, or it's now part of the Great Western Trail series of games. Great Western Trail is a game from Alexander Pfister from a few years back. They recently did a second edition of with new art, and when they announced that, they also announced a trilogy of Great Western Trail games. Great Western Trail 2nd Edition, Great Western Trail Argentina, then Great Western Trail New Zealand, which I think is slated for next year. Each version, or really Argentina and then New Zealand, will have tweaks and stuff from Great Western Trail. There'll be a lot of Great Western Trail in here, and then some areas where it kind of diverges and becomes different. Nick and I had a chance to play this at Gen Con, and really enjoyed it. Spoiler alert, we really enjoyed it a lot. It did some really interesting new things while remaining very much Great Western Trail as it lives and breathes. Boom, Great Western Trail. So what's really cool about this game, if you are familiar with Great Western Trail and want to try this, you'll be able to get up and running pretty quickly with this version, because the kind of structure of turns and the types of cards and the general things you're doing are quite familiar. And then it kind of, again, diverges at some points that are pretty stinking interesting, I think. So we're going to unbox this and just kind of see how it looks and all that jazz and what's on the inside. So this is the cover. I think it's mad beautiful. The second edition of Great Western Trail, the art on the cover and stuff did a really good job just capturing the kind of like romantic ideal of like the West, because it is something that is like mustn't have been a good time to live, but it was a romantic time looking back. It's very beautiful, very scenic and stuff. They really captured that well here in Argentina's cover. Let me pop back out here so I can kind of see what the heck we're doing. And I'll pop in to show some stuff as we go. And I'm just going to sort of open this up, show you the biddies and stuff, and give you a little bit of an overview based on the play that Nick and I had, and to kind of show you the kind of new content, what it means, because it'll obviously look like an out of context mess if you don't know the rule book. So I'll try to give you a little bit of an idea. Let's start by de-shrinking this. Create a little recycle pile down beneath me here. The plan B, I just want to double check that's still the same so I'm not speaking out of turn. Plan B's been really riding the Chris Quilliams art train lately, and I think it's been a good move. I really quite like Chris Quilliams' art. The second edition did many of the things. They did Coimbra and stuff like that. And didn't Chris Quilliams do like Pandemic and stuff? I remember like looking up, and Chris Quilliams has a longer resume than I thought. And I was like, wow. I think this is indeed slated for an Essen release. Yes, I think ideally they would have liked to have had it for like Gen Con and stuff, but Essen twill be. So it won't be too long till it's available to everybody. Rule book. Stuff with rules in it. Boom. The way of a gaucho. I think this is the Solo Adventures in Argentina. Great Western Trail Argentina. An appendix of the types of buildings and things. Quick little reference there. before we get into, if there's anything you want me to stop and take a deeper look at, by the way, I'm doing this live. Hello, chat. How the heck are y'all? Chris Williams did the new Carcassonne, yeah. So if ever I'm referring to chat and stuff, that's what I'm doing. Hello. If there's anything you want me to stop and take a gander at a little more, ever ask questions about what means what, and all that jazz, just ask and I will do my very best to check that. Board Then Play, greetings from Sydney. Golly, can we come visit? Can we just come visit? We're in a heat wave right now, and I'll take some winter weather. This has another insert similar to the second edition of Great Western Trail, which is actually pretty darn good for an insert. We're not huge insert people generally, but you know, we'll accept it. So let's talk about like a first kind of major changes, that being the board. All right, so it's gonna look like a Great Western Trail board. Boom. Let's see, that might be a little better. It's a little bit bright and stuff I haven't exposed for this kind of board, so apologies there. It's a little overexposed, but we'll deal. But a couple things you'll notice that is like, was immediately, so let's zoom back out for this, immediately kind of trick you out is in Great Western Trail, you start down here and you go through trails and you end up over here. And that's where Kansas City is. In this game, you start down here and you go up here. And it's just like such a classic, like little change, but it was actually hard. You get kind of lost because you're like, wait, where, oh, it's here, you know, because you're just locked into like Great Western Trail, Great Western Trail, Great Western Trail. And so that's one thing immediately I was like, this is actually harder to remember than you would think, just going this way to this way. It does have some gloss to it. Yes, it does, which is a board game capturer's nightmare. Keeps stuff matte. It's nice, but it actually looks nice to people. But it's not like high gloss or anything, but it's got some gloss to it. Yeah. So that's one thing that's kind of big and different. But you're going to kind of see a similar layout. You're going to see different spots for buildings to go. You're going to have some starting buildings, the A, B, and C. Rather than forest, you have these kind of farms. But there are buildings that will act similar to the forest buildings, if you're familiar from that, from the base regular Great Western Trail. But one thing you're going to see along the route of the train, which also goes backward in comparison to the second edition of Great Western Trail, starts over here and works its way down here. But along the dock, if you see over here, let me see if I can kind of get a zoom in on that. Boop. Along here, you're going to see all these various points with arrows going up. And one thing that's really kind of interesting in this one is as you progress your train, you are going to open up effectively shortcuts to Buenos Aires, which is where we're going now, instead of Kansas City. So if you're going to Buenos Aires, normally you kind of go through the whole thing and have to end up here, and then you go through a very similar sequence to going to Kansas City in Great Western Trail. It's almost very similar in terms of the steps you're going to take. You're going to put some tiles out on the board. You're going to get a diverse hand of cattle to turn in, all that kind of jazz. But if you want to start going to Buenos Aires quicker, if you progress your train to these various points, you can, as you're going along the trail, bam, immediately shortcut to Buenos Aires. You don't have to go through the whole trail. And that's something that's really interesting, especially because if you get all the way down here and you're starting right here, you in theory can go, you're going like halfway down the board and then you're like, can go right. So you could, in theory, speed up the game significantly. Now you do have to get your train quite a ways down the rail. But I was like, that is really interesting where all of a sudden maybe people are going faster and faster and the game will kind of speed up on you as you go. The potential is there for it anyway. We did a little bit of this in the game that I played. No one got to like way over here, mind you. If you get down here around the back, you actually can like loop the train around and go through it again to get various rewards. Things along the track and stuff are really similar, again, where you can put these kind of like your little station agents and stuff, using your employees to kind of collect bonuses and all that jazz. And the rest of the layout's kind of similar. It's just, again, reverse. Like this is normally in the top left corner. Now it's in the bottom right. All this jazz for Kansas City is in the top left. Now it's in the bottom right. But otherwise, it's laid out in a similar fashion. The other kind of main thing that you're going to see that is different, and this is a major difference from Great Western Trail 2nd Edition to this, is there are no longer bandits, which replaced Native Americans in the 2nd edition of Great Western Trail. They were replaced with bandits. And now, and there's hazards, of course, and now There's no bandits, no hazards, there's farmers. And there's different color farmers, which will serve a similar function, but they are also an employee you can hire. So they're more dynamic, I guess, or more impactful part of the game. In base Great Western Trail, you have these hazards which kind of block paths or make them just generally more expensive to go through. And if you collect them, you can use them mostly for objectives. Like, you need a yellow and a green bandit and a rock hazard to complete this objective. And you spend some money and stuff. Or if you capture a bandit or whatever, you might gain some money. And there might be worth some points and stuff like that. But here you have these various color farmers, which I'll actually get to. So there's a green and blue and orange and yellow and stuff like that. And the farmers are a much bigger piece of the game, which we'll kind of see as we go here to player boards, which now we're in the box again. So here's our player board. And one thing you'll note, it looks kind of similar in terms of the auxiliary actions. The auxiliary actions are mostly the same, except for when they deal with farmer things. But one thing you'll see is there's a fourth row. This is dual layer, by the way. Very nice, just like the second edition. There is a row here for farmers. So when you encounter a farmer, you can hire them, and then they will go onto your board. You have to pay money to bring them onto your board, but then they become a fourth type of employee that you can use. That's going to manage food and gaining grain. There's also this track along the bottom that will be your amount of grain that you have. It'll kind of go up and down, similar to the certifications or the ribbons. And you're going to need food because now we're shipping cattle over to Europe. So getting to Buenos Aires is just the start of the cattle's journey and stuff, which is super cool. So you got cowboys. Or, okay, actually, let me get the names right. I think they're gauchos. They serve these first three workers serve the same functions as in Great Western Trail, but they obviously have different names. But they're sort of the cowboys, the builders, the engineers. Let me get the names right, though. So we've got gauchos here. We've got carpinteros, carpenters, and maquinista, the machinist. And then granjero for the farmers. Pardon, I haven't done Spanish in a while. As a Californian, I did, but it doesn't roll off the tongue, so I know I sound rather white man doing Spanish, but I'm trying to do the pronunciations correct. So you got 4 of these boards and stuff. And down here, the other symbol you're going to see are these little sickles, which is standing for kind of strength in the game, because the cows now, in addition to providing their breeding value like they do normally, they have different names and stuff, but they're kind of a similar thing where the value up here is their breeding value. But down here along the bottom, and obviously the victory points they're worth, down here along the bottom is this sickle symbol, which represents their strength, which is going to be how you recruit the farmers, the granjeros, by using strength. So you can turn in, discard, spend your cards and stuff to basically provide strength and stuff that the farmer will make use of, and that's what brings them in. They start making use of your cattle in that way to farm and stuff. And one thing that's really interesting is you might have some cattle that are low level for the breeding value, but they're stronger, so they're more useful for getting your farmers hired and stuff like that, and anything that might require like the strength of the cattle, but they're not going to be as useful for the pure kind of breeding value that they might provide. And that's something I think is really interesting. So these little ones here, these are all your starter cards and stuff. They just provide one sickle. They're just not very strong. Let's see if we can find some examples. The 2s will provide 2s. I remember some examples of ones that were a low number. I think there's a new type of cow. Let's see if I can find them here. 3s. So this one's a 3, but their strength is 5. They're not worth as many points. They're only worth 1 point right here. 5 strength and only 3 breeding value. This one is 3 and 4, but they're worth more points. So now you have just these additional kind of decision points of well, maybe I want to get that cow because when it comes around, I can use the strength of them to hire a farmer. You know, things like that, but they're not going to be as worth as many points at the end of the game. So maybe you're trading like an in-game benefit for end-game points or vice versa. Things like that. So that I thought was like right away. And in general, what we enjoyed with Great Western Trail Argentina were all those moments that give you like all of a sudden new things to think about. Like, okay, like, you know, in Great Western Trail, this is not a knock or anything like that. You're kind of just like thinking of like, I want diverse colors. I want to repeat colors because I can only count each color, each type of cow once when I'm going to Kansas City. Now, and maybe you can turn in one for like $2 at a building or something. And now maybe I want to consider using this cow mostly for their strength. I'm not as worried about what they can provide for me when I get to town. I want to use them along the trail. And like things like that are just interesting, fun choices to have to make. This is for solo play. Similar again to the kind of solo board in second edition, but again with the addition of a track here for grain. Some sweet bags to put all the tiles in. Speaking of, we got little discs. We got our trains and our cowboys and stuff, and some squishy hats. Yes, I'm here for the squishy hat era of board games. Let's see. I'm gonna guess there's tiles underneath. Aha. Fun little Easter egg right there. Boom. So let's talk about this and see what the heck we got going on here. Thank you, Nick, for holding it down in chat, by the way. And yes, Alexander, they did change the types of cattle to reflect the area more. All right. So one thing you'll see kind of on these this first page right here is really where things change in a big way from Great Western Trail to Great Western Trail Argentina. It has to do with these cities and these ships. Now, I won't punch everything out on air, but I will show you some of these things because this is, to me, where everything kind of changed and where for our money, stuff was changed for, I think, the better. I think it's really kind of interesting, gives you a different dynamic. And this is kind of, because I know there's going to be the question, we're going to answer more of these types of questions in, you can obviously ask them here, but we're going to answer more of these questions in a video where we directly compare Great Western Trail 2nd Edition to this. But this is where I think you can safely say that like this couldn't have just been an expansion. That's going to be a question people have, but should this have just been an expansion for Great Western Trail or its own game? This whole thing and the way the ships and all act is just fundamentally different from Great Western Trail. So you've got Rotterdam, boom, A and B side, and I think you can choose, I don't know if you can mix A's and B's, you probably can, but you can choose the A or the B side, which will mostly change the types of bonuses and costs you can get in these European cities. You'll play with 3. We got Le Havre. We got Liverpool. All right, so up above the board, we got all of our employees. Here's all these farmers, by the way. And the strength right here, the 7 and stuff, if you can see that, is going to be the strength that's required to recruit them, to be able to collect them. Otherwise, you can kind of pass them as if they were a hazard on the board. Let me just see if there's anything else I want to snag from right here. I think I'm good. Okay. So we've got these cities and these ships. So these cities are going to be the ultimate destination for the cattle. They're going to end up going onto this board. So normally in Great Western Trail, you kind of deliver to Kansas City. You put those cows on a train, which is based on the strength, the breeding value you have. You can reach different cities, and you can put one of your discs down from your player board onto that space on the kind of top of the board, and now you've delivered to that city, and that's kind of done. Now when you go to deliver, you are actually going to load them up onto a ship, and it's going to kind of sit there in port for a while, and at different points in the game, those ships are going to ship off to the European cities. All right, put that over there. It's over here. I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about here. Now, I can't recall the exact way that you line these up, but these will basically, all of these ships will get lined up along the right-hand side of the board. Pull that back here. Along the right-hand side of the board. Ooh. Kind of along this edge, you're going to put these ships out. And these ships will have different colors. Kind of in the top right, this 0 ship is one that's kind of like always available. It's kind of the, you'll lose 2 points and get $2. It's kind of like the going to Kansas City ships. That one doesn't go anywhere. But these other ones, you have these different colors. You have this kind of yellow, this kind of teal, and this sort of dark purple color. And at 3 different points in the game, if you can see this right here, you have a yellow anchor, a teal anchor, and a purple anchor. So for all the ships that you have out, boom, and then there's these ones here kind of for the end of the game that are just worth points for every disc you have on them. But for all the ones that have anchors on them, they are going to ship at different points in the game. So if we had all of these ships right here lined up, whatever ones have discs on them and everything, when we hit and we fill this up every time someone goes to Buenos Aires, so we fill it up with new employees and things like that. When we hit the yellow marker here, all of the yellow ships are going to ship off to Europe. They're gone. So you need to make sure that you have, you know, if you want to go to those places, you want to have delivered to these ships before that point, because once they're gone, they're gone. They're out of the game. They're done. And when you go, then they're going to go over to those other boards. So this is where also the grain comes into place. On these tiles, there might be some grain costs, and that's because it's a long trip and you got to have your cattle get fed. So you need to have grain and things to be able to go here. You need to be able to turn in 2 grain by, you know, moving your little marker back on your track. And your farmers are going to help you produce grain when you get some and then start making use of those types of buildings. That's a wholly new building. The rest of the buildings, the reason I didn't show you is they do, again, you have to know Great Western Trail, but if you do, they do very similar things. They're going to help you basically mitigate that hand of cards you have to get the right hand for when you hit town. So this is where the grain comes into play. You got to spend that grain, and then when these ship out, then those discs will drop to different places. So there's the kind of 1s and 2s of Roman numerals, and I'm going to forget exactly how this works, so forgive me. These little Roman numerals will also have a color to them. I know it might be a little too small to see, but this is like a gray 1. So when this ships off, that disc, if you had one on here, whoever has a disc on here is going to land in Rotterdam. It's the gray 1. There's also these brown banners of 1 and 2, and these black ones of 1 and 2. And so the different ships, like this, for example, is a brown 2, are going to ship off to their various cities. And then you're going to have discs sitting here. And then later on, you can move discs into the kind of 4 districts of each city to gain various boons and things like that. So there's this kind of like delayed tiered system for what happens to your cattle after you hit Buenos Aires and start your next trip. You now have things to kind of do with those cattle at different points in the game. It isn't like 1, 2, 3 necessarily, but now you're kind of managing and monitoring, when do I get stuff onto what ship, because it's going to ship out, and what kind of boons, what cities do I want to make sure they land in, and what kind of boons do I hope to take from there. Because certain ones, if you're looking at Rotterdam here, if you put your disc onto this spot from up here, you bring it down, anything that stays up here will be worth 2 points at the end of the game, so it's still worth something. But if I bring it down here, it'll give me $6 immediately, then be worth 4 points at the end of the game. So now there's this sort of like area control aspect of those discs. That's something that Nick and I really enjoyed, was as we go through the game and we're still doing the same stuff and moving our, moving our cattle and everything through the board, we're also still thinking about, okay, well, when am I going to move into what areas of the board here? And the thing is, you got to notice is you have to pay grain to do this. So it's not just free to move it. So now we're managing grain to get your cattle onto the ship. But then when do you go, this one right here is worth straight up 12 points. You have to have 7 grain to go there. So it costs a lot. So you got to think of like, okay, well, when am I going to build up that grain? When am I going to spend that grain? Does that then make it hard? Because when I hit town, do I have enough grain to put them onto a ship? So there's all these other things to think about. And that is something that is so fun to think about. And it's kind of like the genius of this is that the 80%, I'd say, of the game, in terms of what you're doing on a turn, is very Great Western Trail. If you know Great Western Trail, you don't have to use a lot of brain power to understand how things work on that front. You still have to think about your strategic choices and all that, but it allows space for your brain to like really enjoy just getting into these new delicious choices and stuff. And the fact that you put a disc out, then that disc will ship off, and then you get to do something else with that stuff is just really fun to think about. It's really, really fun. And those are kind of the major changes, is the farmers and what they fuel. So the farmers that you can kind of collect that also act as hazards. Also, these are the one thing that's also kind of interesting is that these farmers are much more seemingly in the trail. In particular, right here at the end, there's spots for 2 farmers. If I'm not mistaken, you fill out kind of right to left. These are the only ways to get to Buenos Aires. So if there's farmers here, you got to pay them to go through, and there's not another way around. But maybe if there's a bunch of stuff or buildings you have to pay for, that would give you reasons to take those shortcuts. But having basically what happens to cattle when you get to town and after is really where the game takes a big left turn in an interesting way. So it's not completely unfamiliar. It's certainly not something that you couldn't put your mind around, but just the fact that these ships kind of at 3 key points in the game ship off, and what do you do with them and how do you plan for that, gives you a lot of strategic choices to make, which is super duper cool. So yeah, I see Nick's kind of handling stuff on the question front. Critical question, are we going to get a playthrough? We're absolutely going to have a playthrough. Yeah, not this upcoming Monday. We have Terracotta Army coming, sponsored by Board and Dice, but the Monday after we'll have this. And then we will also do Great Western Trail 2nd edition with the expansion at some point this fall, certainly. Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to show you a little bit of that. Any questions and stuff? You fill out right to left. Yeah, with the various farmers. If there's any questions and stuff, let me know. I'm gonna hang out for just a minute or two, but I just wanted to show you this and sort of ramble through a bit of an overview of what you're doing. So again, if you're kind of brand new to Great Western Trail, I think this is a perfectly fine place to jump into. I don't think you have to play Great Western Trail to be able to learn this game. If you are familiar with Great Western Trail, you will be able to get right into this very quickly, because you can sort of say, like, you know how the cards work and stuff. But for anyone who's just kind of newer in general to Great Western Trail, it's all about running cattle through the kind of various pathways on the board, generally starting down here, following the arrows in the path to wind and work your way up here to Buenos Aires. And you have this hand of cattle. We have a bunch of starter cattle, so it's a deck building game. It's not like one where you're going to get 1,000 cards, but it is a deck building game. And in it, you're going to hope when you get to town up there, you're going to hope to have a diverse hand of cattle, because I have all these ones, but they're all the Niata cows, and I can only make use of one of them in terms of determining the value of my hand of cards. So you really want to have a rainbow of cards and have no repeats of the exact types in your hand, and that will give you money. You know, if you had like a hand and the total breeding value of different cattle you had was 8, you'll get 8 money. That will also determine what boats you can go to, because like this boat, minimum strength you have to have is 9. Cannot go there without a 9. So that is similar to Great Western Trail, where if you're trying to reach those further cities, if you want to reach this one in particular, you got to have a strength of 15 in your hand, which is not as easy to achieve. You got to buy some higher level cows, most likely. So as you're going from each of these buildings, which I haven't punched out yet, they're going to give you things you can do. There's some starting buildings down here. In this case, I could turn in any 2 cattle that are the exact same. So 2 of these gray ones, for example, and get $2. That's a better deal. Like, those are only going to give me $1 in town maximum, because I can't turn in 2 of the same. So I get a little bit of money. It allows me to draw more cards into my hand. If I get through my deck of cards, I get to shuffle, and anything that I've purchased now gets shuffled in, and my hand gets better. And that's the deck building aspect. Things will allow you to move your train. Things like this will allow you to buy more cattle. Increase your little certifications. So when you get to town, you can turn in those ribbons to kind of virtually increase the strength of your hand, and do a bunch of auxiliary actions, which are going to be various things that will mitigate the hand of cards you have, and move your train, and do all sorts of things to sort of power up your game. So Again, if you're already a fan of Great Western Trail or have played Great Western Trail, you will be able to get right into this in a fairly quick manner, I think. Would you agree with that, Nick? Also, one little change I think is positive. The 1s are silver, the 5s are gold. Silver's less valuable than gold. And I feel like in Great Western Trail, it's like the bronze are 5s and the silver color ones are 1s. You're like, this is backward. This is backward. Are there still objective cards? I think there are. Good question. We just played this. I have no memory of that. Maybe? Let's have a look-see. Stand by. We played most of one full game, so you know. There are these ship cards. These might be solo thingies. These look like solo. Stand by. No, those are solo. Yes, we do have objectives. Great question. These ones right here, these are the ones I was talking about earlier. Breeding value of 1, strength 7, and worth 3 points. So they don't help you out in town at all, but they are work. They are beasts of pure burden. But there are absolutely objectives and stuff. Have 2 value 3 cows, and have one of your discs at one of the various stations along the train. Boom, gets you 4 points. This one have hired one of these purple farmers with either a green or a black hand, a level 3 cow, level 4 cow, things like that. There's this stuff to do with a compass. I can't quite remember. I think it's have things in the westernmost quadrant of the cities. You know, north, south, east, and west. I can remember where things are. Stuff like that. So there's this kind of thing with the directionals of like where you put things in the city. So it might give you even more stuff to kind of focus on with that. Yeah, so objectives to consider. Again, they function the same. When you collect one, they get shuffled into your discard pile. When you draw them into your hand, you can play them out. You'll immediately get a little boon, in this case, 1 grain. But then you're on the hook for this objective. If you achieve it, you get 4 points. If you do not, you lose 2 points. And this is something that was hurting me in the game that we played, where I was like, I'm not going to achieve these like I thought. And I don't have very many points to start with, and now I have less. There's also another change. These exhaustion cards. So basically your cattle and stuff get tired. They get pooped out. And they will kind of clog up your hand. You can get rid of them fairly easily, but they will, as you're kind of going through and doing laps, you'll accrue some amount of these exhaustion. They provide no breeding value. They lose you 2 points if you don't get rid of them by the end of the game. And that was another interesting thing to have to consider. It's like, okay, well now, how do I manage this exhaustion? Do I have to kind of spend a turn to get rid of these things? They're not, if I recall, that difficult to get rid of, but they're a pain, and they kind of, you know, take you out of your rhythm of what you're kind of hoping to do, and they get in the way of your actions and stuff. So yeah, those are kind of some of the main changes, y'all. It's very Great Western Trail, but very kind of new feeling as well, which we think is really exciting. And I think it kind of hit a sweet spot, because this is something that I think a lot of people had the question of when this was first announced. We're like, well, how Great Western Trail is this going to be? Like, what percentage are we at with familiarity? We were certainly curious, and we're like, okay, is there going to be anything different? Is this just sort of like in Argentina now? And you're like, all right, like, I want you to do something different. And I was honestly really pleased when we got to play this with the changes, because I think it did a good thing of like, don't make it completely different, because then why call it Great Western Trail, right? But give me something to chew on, something new and interesting. And the ships, the farmers, you know, and the cities, which are all very much linked, because the farmers fuel getting to ships and getting to these cities and stuff like that, are really, really interesting things indeed. I think it kind of makes that, I think the funnest part of Great Western Trail was like getting the hand of cards right before you get to town. Keep that the same, and they did, and give me something more dynamic on the sort of back end of delivering cattle, and they very much did that. So now that there's this kind of like 3-step process of like, get your cattle, get your hand of cards right, get on the right ship. When that ship ships, get into the right areas of town to get money or points or both or what have you. super interesting. Like, very, very fun to think about. And, you know, as if Great Western Trail didn't have enough to think about. Short answer, what's up, you bang bong? It hurt you didn't remember those objectives. I'm pretty sure Nick won by a margin. Nick and I, we were playing a 4-player game, and Nick and I were fighting for 3rd and 4th place, to be clear. And I didn't remember the objectives because I blocked it out of my memory because it was a sore spot of just like, oh, and you didn't do this very good either. You show all the different cows. Absolutely. So, new types of cattle, as we showed here. Let me get this clear here. Let me clear out all the board so you can kind of see the cows more clearly against our backdrop. And like I said, this is a little brighter than it kind of is in real life. It's not bright, but with the current exposure on our camera, it's popping off a little brighter. So you've got the Niatas, which are part of your starting hand of cards. They are the weakest. They are just gray value 1 cows. I'm gonna get this because as I do this, I'm gonna build the hands of cards. Patagonicos are the greens. They have a strength of 2 and a breeding value of 2. All right, boom. Go through here, pardon me. All right. Fronterizo, the black 2. Again, this very much mirrors Great Western Trail, the starting hand you'll have some green cows and black. You'll have the grays and you'll have the whites. Orlando Argentino, 2 2s. So again, you're hoping to have different colors. So the best you can sort of have at a start is you want to have 1 of the white cards, 1 of the black, 1 of the green, and a gray. And you'll have 7 strength. 7 breeding value. And coincidentally, 7 strength as well, because these ones all match their type. All right, now getting into the types of cattle you can hire. Blanco. Orejinegro. I think black and white is what they're going for. Orejinegro. Yeah. I think black and white. Chaqueño. All right. 3, level 5 strength. Again, this one blue is 3 and 3 for strength, 3 points. Chaqueño, 3, a little bit stronger. Oh, a Serrano. 3, strength of 4. That's a beautiful cow. That's a beautiful cow right there. All right, Serrano peppers. Franquero, strength of 4, breeding value of 4, strength of 6. All right, so originally the Longhorns, I think, were the 4s, right? And the Aberdeen Angus. 5s. Boom. There's my other little stack of cards. Where'd you go? Another little stack of cards. Where'd those orange guys go? Now I'm lost. Help me, I'm in the dope. These exhaustion cards. Oh, here they go. Some more of them. And then the Caracus, I guess. These ones are orange 1s, but again, worth 2 and 3 points, and their strength is 7. So these ones are like pure like beasts of burden. They're not going to help you a lot getting to town, but they are very strong. They'll definitely help you with recruiting those farmers. So that's your cattle. All right, you start off with the top row here, and you can hire a mixture there of the different types of cattle. You've also got your objective cards, your exhaustion cards, some solo stuff. Blam. That makes up your cardboard cards. That means white with black ears. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That was good. Yeah, they do have black ears right here. Thank you. Cool. I love that. Yeah, that's a cattle. The art is beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. Great Western Trail, the original edition, cover aside, was a really pretty game. It actually looked very nice. But Chris Williams' art style is, it's just, it's like almost like watercolory. Chris Williams does different styles. Not this is only the style, but like with the Great Western Trail, they're almost kind of like watercolor And it's just a cool style. It's a really cool style. A little herding dog. And I think it works really well. I think it works really well. The cattle and stuff are really pretty. Really, really pretty. You know, again. Nick out here asking the important questions. Which kind of cow is the cutest? You tell me. I like the ones that they sort of, I don't know if they naturally come, they're all like fluffy. Every cow deserves a perm. I said it. Treat them cows nice like. Jen says, the only thing that's making me hesitant to pick this one up is knowing the New Zealand one is coming and that it might be the best of the three. Don't want to own more than one version of Great Western Trail, so some FOMO sets in. Now that, yeah, see, that's I completely understand that. If you're not looking to own multiple versions, they are different. And in my book, and this is something that everyone has to make their own decision for themselves, they're different enough to own both. But, you know, you're probably ultimately going to, I can picture once all three are out, we will find the one we like the most. And that probably will become the one we play. So I completely understand wanting to be like, well, let me see what comes out next and see which is the best. And you better believe we're going to make that video as soon as New Zealand drops. You better believe that video is coming. You know, then you go for that. And I completely understand that. I think that's totally fair. I think that the goal is to give different flavors, different things to think about while keeping a core of similar mechanisms together. And so it might just come down for some people to the core is always the same and those other aspects and stuff. Which of those are the most interesting to me? So I completely understand waiting. And like, you know, there'll probably be some friend or someone you know out there or someplace you go to where this might be available to play in the meantime, and great, you know what I mean? And if you don't need to own it, or you can wait to see compare all three next to each other and then make your decision, that's rad. But I can also understand the FOMO in the meantime. That I feel you there. I completely feel you there. That's a lot. New Zealand sheep and shepherds. Heck yeah. That's one thing we were talking to Shem Phillips. He's just like, we don't have cows. So I think it's going to be sheep. Actually, I think we know it's going to be sheep. Isn't it on the cover that they released in their sheep? Makes sense, you know. But you can run them sheep. Sheep love to be run. Do you prefer this one over the classic version? We haven't played a completely full game of this yet. We were a couple turns away, and then we were going to go into endgame scoring. So I'm going to make that video. That'll probably come out next week, but I want to get some full plays of this in first and then do a video comparing, because I also want to be able to, in a more kind of organized fashion, quickly get people to the comparison points of these two games and then give my kind of final thoughts, and also want Nick to be able to play a full game of it and stuff before we do that. But I really, really love very much this stuff over in terms of it purely in the base game of Great Western Trail without the expansion, which we now have for the second edition as well. I think this right here, pure in the box, is much more interesting on the back end of stuff than in base game Great Western Trail. This is super cool, and the ships and when those ship and stuff, the timing of that, I think that is very cool. A very cool change. I have to have this one because Argentina. Heck yeah. I mean, how cool is that? I just love the idea of kind of celebrating the culture of like running cattle and stuff like that in different places. I think it's really cool. All right, if there's no other questions and stuff, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. I've taken up enough of your time. You got a weekend to get to. I knew I wanted this after trying a second edition last October. It's in my top 5. Already hyped for New Zealand. Same. I'm so excited to see what they do with New Zealand. This has got me, you know, this and what they do has given me a ton of confidence for whatever they come up with to do for the New Zealand version. Whatever those changes are, I am very keen to learn more about, because this already is really interesting, where it's very Great Western Trail, but very much new Great Western Trail, and that's cool. That's cool. To give something that is truly not just like a reskin. That would have been a waste of time and energy, and I'm glad that they didn't do that, you know. Maybe a publisher off the popularity of Great Western Trail could have gotten away with something like that once, but they were not interested in doing that. They wanted to give you a game that's worth having. So, usually play Great Western Trail 2 players, only 3 and 4. Nick and I play a lot of 2 player. Most we play our games 2 player. We played Great Western Trail at all player counts, but we played a lot of 2 player and like it just fine. It's definitely a bit different because you have a little less traffic on the board in terms of buildings. And Nick and I also don't often do a build heavy game. So it's definitely different with more players and things like that. But I like it just fine at 2. I think it's great. I enjoy it very much too. I don't ever feel like I'm missing out. And I have played higher player count games. So I never think like, oh, if only, you know, I enjoy it so much. Just different. And they do modify how much you move. In a higher player count game, you can move further to kind of combat that stuff. All right, y'all, that's gonna be it for me. Thank you for watching our first ever kind of live unboxing video. If this is something you enjoyed and want to see more of, and kind of like a first look kind of thing, definitely let us know. We're always trying to do content that's interesting to people. So let us know if you want to see more kind of first looky, first impression kind of stuff. We absolutely consider that. So let me get ready to get out of here. Enjoy us on Twitch. If you enjoy hanging out with us and chatting, check us out at twitch.tv/brothersmurph. We are live multiple times a week, and we would absolutely love to have you. There's nothing else. Thank you, Nick, for being in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for coming to watch. I'm Mike Murphy, and I will see y'all next time. Have a fantastic weekend. And if you ever pick this one up, drop a comment and let me know what you end up thinking about it. I would love to hear that. Bye, everybody.